Captain Park Hyun sat in his big command chair aboard the spaceship New Seoul, when suddenly all the warning lights started flashing red across the control room. The ship was floating quietly in deep space, doing routine checks on nearby star systems, when Communications Officer Lee Hana jumped up from her workstation with her eyes wide open and her hands shaking. Something big was happening, and Lee Hana could barely speak as she turned to face Captain Park Hyun. Her voice was high and scared when she said, "Captain, we are getting a signal from somewhere far away, and it sounds really bad. The signal is coming through all the space noise and static, but I can hear voices crying for help." Park Hyun stood up quickly and walked over to Lee Hana's workstation to listen to the strange message himself. The voice that came through the speakers was not human and spoke in broken words that were hard to understand. But the fear and pain in the voice was clear to everyone in the room. "Please, anyone help us," the voice said through crackling static. "The Vex Empire ships came 3 days ago and they are killing everyone. Our cities are burning and our children are hiding in caves underground. They take people away in big metal ships and we never see them again. Please someone help us before we are all gone." The signal was coming from a planet called Kepler 442b, which was supposed to be protected by galactic law, because the people living there were not advanced enough to defend themselves against space attacks. But now someone was attacking them anyway, and the galactic government was not doing anything to help. Lee Hana pressed more buttons on her control panel, and suddenly the main screen showed pictures that made everyone in the room feel sick to their stomachs. The pictures showed huge black ships floating above a beautiful green planet, while bright orange fires burned in all the cities below. Small figures ran through the streets trying to escape, while bigger figures in metal suits chased them with weapons that shot deadly beams of light. Engineer Kim Dae walked onto the bridge just as the worst pictures started showing. He was a quiet man who rarely showed emotion, but when he saw alien soldiers grabbing children and throwing them into metal cages, his face turned red with anger. "Those monsters are taking kids away from their families," he said with his voice getting louder. "My own daughter is about the same age as some of those children." The alien message kept playing over and over again while more pictures showed the terrible things happening on the distant planet. Whole families were running toward mountains and trying to hide in deep caves while their homes burned behind them. Old people, who could not run fast enough, were being captured by the alien soldiers and loaded onto transport ships. Captain Park Hyun had been in space for 20 years and had seen many difficult situations, but nothing like this before. The galactic laws were very clear about not getting involved in other people's problems. Each planet was supposed to solve their own troubles, and nobody was allowed to interfere even when bad things were happening. But as Park Hyun watched more pictures of innocent people being hurt and killed, something deep inside his chest started burning like fire. These were not just numbers in a report or stories he heard from other people. These were real families with real children who were suffering and dying while their world was being destroyed. The bridge became very quiet as everyone watched the terrible pictures and listened to the desperate voices calling for help that might never come. Navigator Youngmin looked at his captain with sad eyes and said, "Sir, the Galactic Council will never send help to that planet. The laws say we cannot get involved in primitive world conflicts, even if people are dying." Park Hyun knew that Youngmin was right. The galactic government had many rules about not interfering with less advanced civilizations, even when those civilizations were being attacked and destroyed by more powerful enemies. But watching innocent children cry for help while alien monsters hurt their families made all those rules seem stupid, and cruel. Kim Dae stepped closer to his captain and spoke in a low voice that everyone could still hear. "Sir, my family back on Earth would never forgive me if I let children die when we could have helped them. We have weapons and ships that could stop those alien attackers, but we are just going to watch and do nothing." Other crew members started nodding their heads and looking at Captain Park Hyun with hopeful expressions. They all wanted to help the suffering people on the distant planet, but they needed their captain to make the difficult decision that would change everything. Park Hyun looked around the bridge at his crew and saw good people who cared about right and wrong more than they cared about following stupid rules. Then he looked back at the screen showing more pictures of families running for their lives and made the most important decision of his career. He walked over to the communication station and told Lee Hana to open a direct channel to Earth Command, the WAM, message he was about to send would break every treaty that Earth had signed with the Galactic government and might start a war between humans and other alien species. But Park Hyun did not care about politics when children were being murdered. Send an emergency message to Admiral Choi Min at Terra Station, he said with his voice strong and clear. Tell her we need the Dreadnought fleet to respond immediately to Kepler 442b. We have a situation that requires maximum force deployment, and we need it now. Everyone on the bridge knew what those words meant. Earth had secret warships hidden throughout the solar system that were built for fighting instead of exploring. These dreadnought ships carried weapons that could destroy entire enemy fleets, and were crewed by soldiers who had trained their whole lives for war. The alien distress signal continued playing its heartbreaking message while Park Hyun stared at the tactical display showing where the Vex Empire ships were positioned around the dying planet. The alien attackers had no idea what they had just done by hurting innocent people while humans were watching. Humans were not like other species in the galaxy. They came from a world that had tried to kill them every single day. For millions of years they had survived ice ages and volcanic eruptions and asteroid impacts and predators that could tear them apart with ease. This constant danger had made them into something that other aliens could barely understand. They were warriors who protected the weak and fought against bullies no matter how big or dangerous those bullies might be. And now the Vex Empire was about to learn what happened when you made warriors angry by hurting children. Park Hyun looked at his crew and said, "Prepare the ship for combat operations. We are going to that planet and we are going to stop those monsters from hurting any more innocent people. Even if the whole galaxy turns against us, we will do what is right." The bridge erupted in activity as every crew member rushed to their battle stations knowing that they were about to start something that would change the galaxy forever. The Vex Empire fleet hung in orbit around Kepler 442b like giant metal vultures waiting to pick clean the bones of a dying animal. Admiral Vex Prime Zeth commanded the attack from his massive flagship that was decorated with trophies taken from 43 other worlds his forces had conquered and destroyed. Zeth was 3 meters tall with chitinous armor that covered his entire body, and 4 arms that ended in claws, sharp enough to cut through steel. His species had evolved on a world where size and intimidation were the keys to survival, and they had used those same tactics to build an empire that stretched across dozens of star systems. The planet below was burning nicely according to Zeth's standards. Most of the major cities had already been reduced to smoking ruins, and the surviving population was being loaded onto transport ships to be sold as slaves in distant markets. The operation was proceeding exactly as planned with minimal resistance from the primitive local. Defender's Tactical Officer Crix was monitoring the long-range sensor displays when something impossible began appearing on his screens. "Sir," he said with his voice showing confusion, "I am detecting gravitational anomalies at the edge of the star. System multiple large masses are dropping out of hyperspace, but I cannot get clear readings on what they are." Admiral Zeth barely looked up from the battle damage reports he was reading. The sensors were probably just picking up asteroids or space debris that had been pulled along by the hyperspace currents. Nothing in this backward system could possibly threaten his powerful fleet of 17 dreadnoughts that had never lost a battle. But then, every warning alarm on the bridge started screaming at once, and Crix's tactical display lit up like a festival fireworks show. 52 massive contacts had suddenly appeared, from what looked like empty space materializing like ghosts becoming solid. The lead ship was broadcasting on all communication frequencies with a message that made Zeth's blood run cold. "This is Admiral Choi Min of the Terran Defense Fleet," said a calm female voice speaking perfect Vex language. "You have invaded a protected world and committed war crimes against innocent civilians. You will surrender immediately and withdraw all forces or face complete destruction." Zeth laughed at first because the idea of some unknown species threatening his mighty empire seemed ridiculous, but then he looked at the tactical display and saw that each of the 52 enemy contacts was showing power readings that were higher than his own flagship. The unknown ships were not just bigger than his vessels. They were radiating energy signatures that suggested weapons beyond anything. In known galactic technology battle stations, he roared while his crew rushed to activate weapons and shields. The 17 Vex dreadnoughts moved into attack formation that had worked successfully against every enemy they had ever faced. But there, Targeting computers could not lock onto the human ships, which seemed to shift and flow like living creatures. The hulls of the Terran dreadnoughts were adapting their color and texture to match the surrounding space, making them almost impossible to see clearly. The Vex targeting systems had been designed to track normal ships that stayed the same color and shape, but these enemy vessels moved like predators that could camouflage themselves. Admiral Zeth ordered his weapons to fire at the largest enemy contact, but before his energy beams could reach their target, the human ships opened fire. First, railgun projectiles traveling at incredible speeds punched through Vex shields like they were made of thin paper instead of advanced energy barriers. The Soul Vengeance demonstrated human military philosophy by targeting the enemy flagship's weapon systems with surgical precision instead of trying to destroy the whole ship. The humans wanted to disable their enemies, not necessarily kill them all, which showed a level of tactical sophistication that the Vex had never encountered before. Captain Park Shin was commanding the Daegu destroyer and watching his tactical display as the Vex fleet formation fell apart under coordinated human attack. "These aliens are not real warriors," he reported to Admiral Choi Min. "They are bullies who have never faced anyone who could fight back. Look at how they panic when their shields fail." The Vex ships had been designed to intimidate primitive civilizations and overwhelm weaker opponents through sheer size and firepower. But they had never been built to fight against enemies who were smarter and faster and more creative at violence. The human dreadnoughts danced between Vex weapons fire, like deadly ballet dancers, while their own shots found targets with deadly accuracy. Within 30 minutes of the battle starting, the mighty Vex Empire fleet found itself completely outmatched by opponents who treated warfare like an art form instead of simple brutality. The human ships moved in perfect coordination, supporting each other and covering weaknesses while exploiting every flaw in Vex tactics. The Terra's Wrath took position directly in front of Admiral Zeth's flagship and began systematically destroying every weapon system on the enemy ship one by one. The human railguns fired with mechanical precision, turning the Vex dreadnoughts' offensive capabilities into floating scrap metal. Admiral Zeth watched his tactical display with growing horror as his supposedly superior fleet was being torn apart by unknown enemies who fought like nightmare predators made real. His ships were bigger and should have been stronger, but the humans were using weapons and tactics that made size irrelevant. Vex had conquered other worlds by using fear and overwhelming force against enemies who had never seen space battles before. But the humans fought like they had been born for war, using every advantage they could create and never giving their opponents time to recover or regroup. Captain Oh Bin commanded the Gwangju Guardian and demonstrated human creativity by using his ship's tractor beams to grab Vex missiles and throw them back at the ships that had fired them. The alien weapons turned around in space and struck their own vessels while the Vex crews watched in disbelief. The human ships carried weapons that had been inspired by Earth's most dangerous predators. Explosive charges that hit like the punches of mantis shrimp cutting beams that sliced through armor like shark teeth through flesh. Electronic warfare systems that confused enemy computers like a predator, confusing its prey before attacking. Admiral Choi Min opened a communication channel to the Vex flagship, where Admiral Zeth was trying to understand how his mighty fleet had been defeated so easily. "Your empire ends today," she told him, with her voice carrying the authority of someone who had never lost a battle. "Your ships will withdraw from this system and you will release all prisoners you have taken." Zeth looked around his bridge at the broken weapons and damaged systems and crew members who were staring at him with fear in their eyes. His empire had built its reputation on being the strongest and most dangerous force in this part of the galaxy. But now he faced enemies who were stronger and more dangerous than anything he had ever imagined. The human dreadnoughts held their positions around the Vex fleet like predators surrounding cornered prey. Their weapons remained charged and ready, but they did not fire again. The message was clear: surrender or be destroyed, and there would be no third option. The age of Vex Empire dominance had ended in less than an hour of battle against opponents who had been hiding their true strength until innocent people needed protection. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were not just another species, but something far more dangerous. Admiral Choi Min was eating her morning meal in her private quarters at Terra Station when the emergency alarm started screaming through the hidden military base. The sound meant that somewhere in the galaxy, Something terrible was happening and Earth needed to respond with deadly force. Terra Station was built inside a huge asteroid that had been hollowed out and turned into the most secret military base in human space. Nobody in the galactic government knew it existed, and that was exactly how Admiral Choi Min wanted to keep things. The base was home to over 50,000 soldiers and engineers who worked day and night building weapons that could destroy entire enemy fleets. The emergency message from Captain Park Hyun played 3 times in the main command center while dozens of Earth's top military leaders gathered around the big holographic display that showed star maps and enemy positions. General Kim Bo was the first to speak after the message ended, and his old weathered face looked grim and angry. The Vex Empire has 17 big warships surrounding that planet, he said, while pointing at the tactical readout. Each one of those ships carries enough weapons to turn a whole continent into burning glass. They have been doing this same attack pattern on other worlds for over a year, and the galactic government just lets them do it. Commander Yoon Jae leaned forward to study the enemy ship formations on the display and noticed something important about how the aliens had positioned their fleet. The Vex ships were arranged in a pattern that looked intimidating, but had serious weaknesses that could be exploited by smart attackers. "What about our stealth technology?" she asked Admiral Choi Min. "The Vex Empire has never seen our adaptive camouflage systems, and they do not know how our ships can become invisible. Our dreadnoughts can appear and disappear like ghosts, which will give us a huge advantage in battle. Earth's military ships used technology that was inspired by the deadly animals that had lived on their home planet for millions of years. The camouflage systems worked like chameleons that could change colors to match their surroundings. The ship hulls were designed like shark skin to move smoothly through space, and the weapons hit targets with the same explosive power as the punches of Mantis." Shrimp Admiral Choi Min activated the fleet-wide communication system that could reach every human warship in the solar system. Within seconds, the message went out to 52 dreadnoughts that were hidden in asteroid fields and behind the moons of distant planets. Each ship had been waiting for years for the order to finally show the galaxy what human warriors could do in a real battle. The Seoul Vengeance was commanded by Captain Seo Jun, who had been born on Mars and had spent his whole life training for space combat. His ship was over 1 kilometer long and carried enough weapons to fight an entire enemy fleet by itself. The crew of 3,000 soldiers had all volunteered to risk their lives protecting innocent people, anywhere in the galaxy. The Busan Thunder was slightly smaller, but carried special weapons that could punch through the strongest enemy shields like they were made of paper. Captain Lee Dong had designed many of those weapons himself, using his knowledge of physics and his understanding of how to hurt things that tried to hurt other people. The Incheon Storm specialized in electronic warfare and could take control of enemy computers and communication systems. Captain Park Min had been a computer expert before joining the military, and she knew how to turn enemy technology against itself. All across human space, the secret dreadnought fleet began, moving toward the launch positions while their crews prepared weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. These were not exploration ships or trading vessels, but pure instruments of war built by people who understood that sometimes violence was the only way to stop greater violence. The flagship Terra's Wrath was the biggest and most dangerous ship in the entire fleet. Admiral Choi Min took personal command of this monster that bristled with railguns and missile batteries and shield generators. The ship carried enough firepower to destroy small moons and was crewed by veterans who had fought in the brutal Titan Wars near Saturn. Those veterans had learned how to fight in the methane storms that raged across Titan's surface, where the weather could kill you in seconds and the gravity was just strong enough to make everything difficult. They had survived battles in places where normal people would die just from the environment, and that experience had made them into the most dangerous soldiers in human space. As the fleet gathered at the edge of the solar system, their hulls began shifting colors to match the star field behind them. From the outside, they looked like empty space, but inside each ship, thousands of humans prepared weapons and armor, and their hearts for the coming battle. These weapons had been designed by minds that had evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill them. Earth had taught humans how to solve problems through violence and creativity and stubborn refusal to give up when things looked impossible. The explosive charges they carried could crack asteroids the size of small moons. The kinetic penetrators could punch through enemy armor like bullets through paper admiral. Choi Min stood on the bridge of Terra's Wrath looking at the tactical display that showed all 52 ships in perfect formation. She had waited her whole career for this moment, when humanity would finally show the galaxy what happened when you made Deathworld predators angry. She opened a communication channel that would broadcast her message to every government building and military base and communication station in galactic space. Her voice was calm and clear, but carried a threat that made alien leaders across the galaxy suddenly feel afraid. "This is Admiral Choi Min of the Terran Defense Fleet," she said. "We have received reports of genocide and civilian targeting in the Kepler 442b system. The Vex Empire has exactly 12 hours to withdraw all forces from that planet and release all prisoners they have taken. If they refuse, then we will demonstrate why intelligent species should never corner a predator from a death world." The message ended, but its impact spread across the galaxy faster than light, as alien governments suddenly realized that the humans they had dismissed as peaceful explorers were actually something much more dangerous. They were warriors who had been hiding their true strength, and now they were done pretending to be harmless. On distant worlds, alien military commanders pulled out old files about human physiology and psychology, and began to understand for the first time just how dangerous Earth's children really were. Humans came from a planet where the weather could kill them, where the animals could eat them, where the very air and water had tried to poison them for millions of years. That constant struggle for survival had created a species that was tougher and meaner and more creative at violence than anything else in the galaxy. And now that species was angry about innocent people being hurt by bullies who thought they were safe because they had bigger ships. The Dreadnought fleet finished its preparations and jumped into hyperspace, heading toward a battle that would change everything. The age of unchallenged aggression in space was about to end forever, because the galaxy's most dangerous predators were finally ready to hunt. While the space battle raged high above the planet, Captain Lee Tae was leading his Marine battalion down through the atmosphere in stealth pods that looked like falling meteors to anyone watching from the ground. The pods were designed to survive crashes into solid rock and could carry fully equipped soldiers through the most dangerous landing conditions imaginable. Lee Tae had been born in the underground cities of Mars, where every breath of air had to be carefully recycled, and every drop of water was precious beyond measure. Growing up in that harsh environment had taught him how to survive in places where normal people would die, and how to fight in spaces too small for regular combat. His battalion of 500 Marines was dropping toward the prison camps where Vex soldiers were holding thousands of captured civilians. The mission parameters were simple and direct extract. All prisoners eliminate any resistance, and do it without destroying the infrastructure that the local people would need to rebuild their civilization. Sergeant Nam Gil was crouched behind strange crystal rock formations that covered this part of the planet, while he studied Vex guard positions through his enhanced optical systems. The enemy soldiers were 3 meters tall with thick armor plating that could stop most conventional weapons, but they moved slowly and predictably, like creatures that had never faced real opposition. The Vex had evolved on a low-gravity world, where being big and intimidating was more important than being fast or clever. Their tactics relied on scaring enemies into surrender, rather than actually fighting battles against determined opponents. They had never learned how to deal with enemies who were smaller, but smarter and much more dangerous. Contact the local resistance, Lee Tae ordered through his secure communication system. Within minutes, his technical specialists had established connection with survivors who were hiding in underground tunnel systems that honeycomb throughout this region of the planet. The local leader was a brave female named Arya, whose family had been taken by the Vex soldiers 3 days earlier. She had been organizing rescue attempts and sabotage operations, but her people lacked the weapons and training needed to fight against advanced alien technology. Arya guided the human Marines through hidden passages that led directly beneath the prison camps where families were being held in metal cages that were too small for comfort. The tunnels had been carved by generations of local people who used them for shelter during the violent storm seasons that regularly swept across their world. The rescue operation began exactly at dawn when the local sun cast long shadows that would help camouflage human movements. The Marines emerged from tunnel openings like nightmares rising from the earth, moving with the predator grace that came from millions of years of evolution on a world that tried to kill everything living. On it, each Marine carried weapons that had been designed specifically for fighting heavily armored opponents. The explosive rounds could punch through Vex armor plating, and the energy weapons could overload alien shield systems. Every soldier was equipped with enough firepower to destroy a city block, but they were trained to use precise surgical strikes that would not endanger the prisoners they were trying to save. Corporal O'Min demonstrated the kind of tactical thinking that made human soldiers legendary throughout their own military. He climbed the outside of a guard tower using nothing but his bare hands and equipment that would fit in a small backpack. His climbing skills had been developed in the mountain ranges of Earth, where one wrong move meant falling to your death. The guard tower was 30 meters tall and covered with smooth metal that should have been impossible to climb. But O'Min used techniques that he had learned from watching spiders and geckos move. Across difficult surfaces, he moved up the tower like liquid flowing uphill, and neutralized the guards inside without making any noise that would alert other enemy positions. His actions freed 200 civilian prisoners who had given up hope of ever seeing their families again. The prisoners included children as young as 5 years old and elderly people who could barely walk after days of abuse at the hands of their alien captors. The Vex soldiers quickly discovered that all their advantages in size and equipment meant nothing against enemies who had been bred for survival on a death world. The human Marines used every aspect of their environment to gain tactical advantages, turning the aliens' own defensive positions against them. Private Kim Yeon showed the creativity that made human soldiers so dangerous when she hijacked a Vex transport vehicle and used it to ram through the main gate of the largest prison compound. The vehicle was designed to carry prisoners, but she turned it into a weapon that opened escape routes for hundreds of captives. The aliens had built their prison camps using standard designs that worked well for intimidating primitive civilizations, but had serious flaws when facing opponents who understood military engineering. The humans exploited every weakness in the defensive layout, using demolition charges to create new openings and electronic warfare to disable security systems. Captain Lee Tae moved through the prison compounds, like a force of nature, directing his Marines with hand signals and tactical communications that the Vex could not intercept. His soldiers worked in perfect coordination, covering each other's movements and ensuring that no enemy position could threaten the evacuation of civilians. The Vex guards found themselves facing opponents who seemed to appear from nowhere and disappear just as quickly. Human Marines used stealth technology and superior mobility to strike at enemy positions before the aliens could respond effectively. The big, slow Vex soldiers could not adapt to fighting against smaller, faster opponents who used hit-and-run tactics by midday. Captain Lee Tae was able to report complete mission success to Admiral Choi Min. "Aboard the Terra's Wrath, all prisoners have been extracted," he said with quiet satisfaction in his voice. "Vex ground forces have been neutralized with minimal casualties to our forces. Local population is requesting permission to join the Terran Defense Alliance." The evacuation shuttles carried freed prisoners up to the human ships where medical teams were waiting to treat injuries and trauma that the captives had suffered during their ordeal. The rescued civilians stared in wonder at their human saviors who had fought through impossible odds to save people they had never met before. These strange bipedal creatures had risked their lives for the simple principle that innocent people should not suffer at the hands of bullies. The humans asked for nothing in return except the knowledge that families would be reunited and children would grow up free from the fear of alien raiders. Arya stood with Captain Lee Tae watching the last shuttle lift off, carrying her neighbors and friends to safety. She had never seen anything like the precision and effectiveness of human military operations. The Marines had accomplished in one day what her resistance movement had failed to do in months of trying. "Your people are different from others in the galaxy," she told the captain. "Most species only care about their own kind, but you came here to help strangers." The captain smiled and replied, "That is what makes us human. We protect those who cannot protect themselves." As the rescue operations concluded and the human Marines prepared to return to their ships, the local population gathered to say goodbye to the warriors who had given them back their freedom. The gratitude in their eyes was worth more than any payment the galaxy could offer. 6 months after the Kepler 442b incident, the galaxy operated under completely new rules that nobody had voted for but everyone was forced to accept. The Vex Empire had dissolved entirely after Admiral Zeth surrendered his flagship and begged for mercy. From the human fleet, the surviving Vex were scattered across space as refugees rather than conquerors, learning what it felt like to be homeless and afraid. Captain Park Hyun commanded the new Sol on routine patrol through sectors that had been terrorized by raiders for decades, but were now experiencing unprecedented peace. The UR space lanes that had once been too dangerous for civilian traffic were bustling with merchant ships from dozens of different species who could finally trade without fear of pirates or slavers. The transformation had been remarkable, and swift pirates who had operated in these regions for generations had either reformed their ways or simply disappeared after hearing stories about what happened to people who preyed on innocent civilians. The few who had tried to continue their criminal activities had been hunted down by human patrol ships and given the choice between prison or exile. Trade routes that had been abandoned for years were reopening as cargo haulers and passenger ships returned to space lanes that were now protected by the invisible presence of human dreadnoughts. Nobody could see the Terran Defense Fleet ships because of their advanced camouflage technology, but everyone knew they were watching and waiting. The Terran Defense Alliance had grown from a single desperate rescue mission into a coalition of over 200 worlds that request news of humanity's military intervention spread across the galactic communication networks faster than hyperspace travel. As species after species learned that the quiet humans had just destroyed the most feared military force in this sector of space, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session within hours as representatives from hundreds of worlds demanded explanations for Earth's violation of sacred non-interference laws. The Great Council chamber on Centauri Prime was filled with angry alien voices as delegates argued and shouted about the dangerous precedent that humanity had just established. Council Speaker Theron raised his multiple tentacles for silence, while his translator implants worked to convert his thoughts into language that other species could understand. The humans have broken the most fundamental law of galactic civilization, he announced with his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced sound systems. They deployed weapons of mass destruction without authorization from this council. They interfered in affairs that were not their responsibility, and they demonstrated military capabilities that threatened the peaceful balance we have maintained for centuries. Ambassador Kang Su stood calmly at the human delegation's podium, despite facing hostile stares and angry questions from every direction in the chamber. She had been Earth's representative to the galactic government for 10 years and had grown tired of watching bureaucrats debate proper procedures while innocent people suffered and died. The council asks why we acted without permission. She began with her voice steady and clear. I ask why you needed permission to stop genocide while you were having meetings and filing paperwork. Children were being murdered and families were being torn apart. How many more worlds were you going to let the Vex Empire destroy while you debated jurisdiction? The chamber erupted in debate as representatives from different species argued about legal precedents and treaty obligations. Many council members were openly afraid of humanity's demonstrated military capabilities. The footage from Kepler 442b showed Terran dreadnoughts effortlessly destroying ships that could have defeated most planetary defense fleets. Representative Kex from the Andorian system stood up and pointed an accusing finger at Ambassador Kang Su. The humans have revealed that they possess a secret military force that violates every arms limitation treaty they signed, he said with his voice shaking from either anger or fear. How can we trust a species that lies about their military capabilities and hides weapons of mass destruction? Ambassador Kang Su activated the holographic display system and showed footage that had been recorded by her own diplomatic staff during visits to worlds that had been attacked by various raider groups. The images showed burned cities, empty villages, and mass graves filled with civilians who had died while the Galactic Council debated proper response protocols. These are the results of your peaceful methods, she said, while the disturbing images played for all the delegates to see. 47 worlds attacked in the past year. 3 million civilians killed or enslaved while you argued about legal procedures and jurisdictional authority. How many more people have to die before you admit that sometimes violence is the only way to stop greater violence? Council Speaker Theron attempted to maintain order as representatives shouted questions and accusations at each other. The carefully maintained diplomatic atmosphere was breaking down as species that had hidden their true feelings about each other finally began speaking honestly about Galactic politics. The Vex Empire followed the letter of Galactic law, argued Representative Zix from the Coalition of Mining Worlds. They filed proper documentation for their military actions and claimed legal authority over the territories they attacked. The fact that we personally disagreed with their methods does not give anyone the right to attack them. Admiral Choi Min appeared as a hologram in the center of the chamber, flanked by projections of other human military commanders. Her presence radiated the kind of quiet authority that came from someone who had never lost a battle and never backed down from a fight. Earth offers the galaxy a simple choice, she said, with her words cutting through all the political noise. Any species that preys upon innocent civilians will face immediate Terran military response. Any world that calls for help will receive it regardless of their political status or treaty obligations. Any organization that prioritizes paperwork over human lives will be completely ignored. The chamber fell silent as every delegate tried to understand the full implications of what Admiral Choi Min had just announced. Humanity was essentially declaring independence from galactic authority and establishing their own rules for when and how they would use military force. Representative Thex from the Rigel Consortium asked the question that everyone was thinking: what gives you the right to make these decisions for the entire galaxy? Who elected Earth to be? The Galactic Police Force Ambassador Kang Su smiled with an expression that was both friendly and terrifying at the same time. Nobody elected us, she replied. We elected ourselves. The moment you chose to let innocent people die, rather than risk political complications, we decided that your authority no longer applies to us. The holographic display changed to show tactical readouts from the battle at Kepler Forum 42b, where 52 human dreadnoughts had defeated 17 Vex Empire ships, without losing a single vessel. The power disparity was so extreme that it made every military expert in the chamber recalculate their assumptions about human capabilities. Admiral Choi Min gestured toward the tactical data and continued speaking. With calm confidence, we have been watching galactic politics for decades, and we have seen the same pattern repeat over and over again. Bullies attack innocents while governments debate jurisdiction. Strong species prey on weak ones, while bureaucrats file reports. Evil succeeds while good people argue about proper procedures. She paused to let her words sink in before delivering the statement that would change galactic civilization forever. That pattern ends now. The Terran Defense Fleet will patrol space lanes and respond to distress calls regardless of political boundaries or legal technicalities. We will protect those who cannot protect themselves, and we will destroy anyone who tries to stop us. Council Speaker Theron made one final attempt to assert governmental authority over the humans, but his words sounded hollow against the reality of human military power. The galaxy had spent centuries building a system based on negotiation and compromise, but that system had just been challenged by a species that believed in action over discussion. The session ended with no formal resolution because there was nothing left to debate. Humanity had drawn a line in space and dared anyone to cross it. The age of unchallenged predation in the galaxy was over because Earth's children had finally revealed what they really were underneath their peaceful exteriors. The delegates filed out of the chamber. Many of them were already composing messages to their home governments warning about the new reality of galactic politics. The humans were no longer content to follow rules made by others. They had become the rule makers, and their rules were simple: protect the innocent and destroy those who harm them.